The narcissistic rage hypothesis assumes that terrorists are full of rage that develop because of their imperfect psychological development in childhood. This term is most definitely used when describing terrorists. Terrorists can be described as narcissistic because they bring down to their level the object which they desire because it's the cause of their envy. For instance, Adolf Hitler, François Duvalier, also known as Papa Doc, and his son Jean-Claude Duvalier, Baby Doc. These terrorists seek power through murder and control. They don't follow the rules. They are sure they're above them. Their main objective is to humble the object of control, wearing and belittling them. But not everyone thinks solely. There is always more than one. A perfect example is one of the greatest and terrifying individuals of all time, Adolf Hitler. German Jews were mostly cosmopolitan in nature and proudly considered themselves to be Germans by nationality and Jews only by religion. His views and opinions almost annihilated an entire race. Individuals like him need an outside enemy to blame for their inadequacies and weaknesses. Born April of 1889, was an Austrian-born German politician. He was the leader of the National Socialist German Workers, also known as the Nazi Party. Hitler wanted to establish a new order of absolute Nazi German supremacy. In order to do so, he needed to declare foreign policy with the goal of seizing living space for the Aryan people. Within 3 years, he had occupied most of Europe and Northern Africa. Nazi forces engaged in numerous violent acts during this war, including the murder of 17 million civilians and an estimated 6 million Jews targeted in the Holocaust. People with disabilities and people with other political views as well. Hitler had created many camps in addition to his attempts at genocide. Some were labor camps, others were death camps. One of Germany's largest concentration and extermination camps was located in southern Poland. This camp consisted of 3: a prison, extermination, and forced labor. Able-bodied Jewish prisoners were sent to a slave labor camp, while the aged, the weak, and children and their mothers were killed. Some prisoners were subjected to medical experiments, and most without anesthesia. Auschwitz is estimated between 1.1 million and 1.5 million deaths, 90% of which were Jews. The camp today stands as a memorial, a memory to the gates of hell.
Although the most extreme action was taken by Hitler, he was not the only narcissistic tyrant that walked the earth. There are 2 others that seem to walk after him. After receiving his MD in 1934, Duvalier was appointed Director General of the National Public Health Service in 1946 under President Dumarcet's estimate. When estimate was overthrown by Paul McClure, Duvalier led the opposition and assumed the presidency soon after McClure's resignation in 1956. He reduced the size of military and organized the Tontons Makuts, also known as Boogeymen, a private force that terrorized and assassinated alleged foes of his regiment. He played on the culture of voodoo to intimidate the opposition as well. Human rights abuses were commanded under Papa Doc, and several thousand opponents were tortured and murdered. Haiti, already the poorest state in Americas, was placed below dirt. Duvalier's government was soon accused of being one of the most repressive in the hemisphere. Within the country, Duvalier used both political murder and expulsion to suppress his opponents. Estimates of those killed are as high as 30,000. Attacks on Duvalier from within the military were treated as especially serious. When bombs were detonated near the presidential palace in 1967, Duvalier had 19th Presidential Guard officers shot in Fort Demanche. A few days later, Duvalier had a public speech during which he read the attendance sheet with the names of the 19 killed officers. After each name, he said absent. After reading the whole list, Duvalier remarked, "All were shot."
Born in 1951, he became president at the age 19. At the eve of his reign, the journalist who interviewed him described him as a buffoon. Not to mention, his school nickname was Baskethead. This could have been one of the reasons for his insecurities and had apparently followed him into adulthood. As if being humiliated as an adult wasn't enough, some exiled Haitians supported secretly by the United States to invade their homeland in attempts to oust him. Baby Doc repelled under great pressure from the United States to moderate the corrupt and dictatorship of his father. He made a show of introducing reforms, replacing some of his father's cabinet ministers, and freeing a number of political prisoners. Unfortunately for him, he was not expecting his exile in 1986. Anti-government demonstration toppled Duvalier's regiment, where he then fled into exile to France.
The psychological self is important in analyzing the behavior of terrorists. For example, Humiliating the terrorists in such situations by withholding of food, activity, etc. would actually backfire, since the main reason for their actions is derived from low self-esteem and humiliation. As a whole, the narcissistic rage hypothesis is mainly concerned with the thoughts of terrorists, the annoyance, the panoramic rancor, catatonic fury. The need for revenge when ridiculed, disdained, or contempt is only the basic framework we have come to understand about the narcissistic mind and the terrorists.
Terrorism is when a group of people or a person brings fear to others through either violence or some type of psychological fear.
I believe terrorism is when a group of people use either scare tactics or any kind of psychological warfare or violence against another group of people that don't share the same ideologies. A lot of modern day has used a lot more violence, as we see in the Middle East.
I think terrorism is the use of fear, but to a greater extent to cause destruction or chaos to a certain group of people, bringing like fear and the breaking of peace.
I believe terrorism is an act that causes disruption, chaos. It tries to divide society, and it's not only bombs. It could be terrorism through the internet, banks, society itself. It just tries to divide us by causing fear.
Terrorism is when people try to implant their beliefs and their ideas on other people, and instead of giving an argument that convinces people, they do it by force or by implanting fear in other people. I think that we have to learn how to also deal with people that are terrorists and not let ourselves be intimidated by them. We should always keep our guard up, but we should not let anybody take what is ours. And I think that this country, one of the greatest things that we have is our freedom. And perhaps that's what people despise about us, is that we do have freedom, that we can make a choice, that we can decide what we want to do and what we don't want to do. But unfortunately, a lot of people in a lot of other countries don't have that. And I think that that's something that we really need to fight for, that we need to not let anybody take that away from us.
So some examples of terrorist groups can be things like the KKK and other purpose-driven groups that try to cause fear. But you can also have governments that can be considered terrorists. You have a lot of African governments. That's how they hold power and stuff like that. You have Sudan, you have what's going on in Libya right now. They can all really be considered terrorist groups.
I believe some examples of some terrorist groups could be dictatorships in Africa. That would be some sort of internal terrorism, where they cause terrorism within their own boundaries. Also, like Al-Qaeda, their exterior terrorism, where they cause it outside of their boundaries. Like one of the interior ones we had here in the U.S., the KKK. And there's many other examples that we can name. Hitler, of course, a prime example.